It all started long before I was born, in a fragile moment in the 1920s, on a difficult journey where my 6-month-old grandfather survived the trials of the sea. His survival is the beginning of my own sea story. My name is Sophia Matsas. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Mystic Seaport Museum, and this is my sea story. My first experience here was with my family when my boys were probably about 4 and 2, and I was just terrified that my oldest would run into the river because he was such a wild card. So I was pretty anxious the whole time, but ultimately my feelings about being here were that it was so peaceful and so serene, and I just loved it. I just felt so connected. I remember being really surprised, actually, because I think, from the road, you don't really understand what's behind all of the buildings. When we entered the museum, it was like a delightful surprise, there was so much to see and so much to do. It was beautiful. The grounds were beautiful, the kids had fun, and it was just a lovely day. The long story of how I ended up here is that when I had my children, I took a break, from working. I was working in Bridgeport, and it was quite a hike. When I went back into the market to find something to get back into marketing, I couldn't find something that would fit my needs and have the flexibility that I needed with the family. And so I created my own business. I started my own agency, and I did that for about 7 years. In 2019, the museum ended up being a client of mine, and so I was a working contract for about 2.5 years as a contractor. I don't know, I ended up getting hired. And by that time, my children were a little older, and so I was able to take on a little bit more, and I was hired as Director of Marketing and Communications, and I did that for about 1.5 years, and then was hired in my current role as the VP of Marketing and Communications. Last October, I was at the Museums America and the Sea Award Gala, and Admiral James Stavridis was being honored and given the award. His speech and his words in that moment when he was accepting that award were really impactful for me. His story about his grandparents fleeing Smyrna, modern-day Turkey in the 1920s, and how it was a journey that was clouded with uncertainty and struggle resonated with me. It was a very similar story, or it is actually a very similar story to what my grandparents had undergone. My grandfather in particular fled the same area in 1924 when he was just 6 months old to go to Greece. For Admiral Stavridis, he said it was a full circle moment for him to go back later as a captain in the Navy and overlook that area aboard a U.S. naval ship. That moment right there at the gala for me felt like a very much the same, a full circle moment where he was telling us the story of his grandparents, and I realized that's my grandparents' story, and look at where I am right now. And it hit. My grandfather fled from what is now modern-day Turkey. It was probably around 1924 when they fled the area to the northern part of Greece, where they ended up staying for years and years before they came to America. My parents and my grandparents were tough yet emotional, fiery. My grandmothers were incredibly strong women, while also adhering to the expectations of women of their time. I remember when I was little, I would always go and spend weekends with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a carpenter. He had a wood shop in his garage, and I just remember going in and watching him work, and he was so precise. I remember just being so intrigued by it. I could sit there and watch him forever. To this day, the smell of wood and the sound of wood being cut just brings me back there. I just feel like I'm right there with him. My connection to my grandfather is right here in this wood shop in the shipyard. When I come in here, I feel like he's almost right behind me, watching over and looking at the shipwrights do work. just the smells and the sounds and, just the shuffling of wood and all the essences around me here remind me of him. Just as Admiral Stavridis felt, I too feel that I have reached a full circle moment in my family's sea story. As I work daily to manage marketing strategies and communications plans, sometimes I think about what it must have been like to live my grandparents' life, crossing the sea into an unknown world and working tirelessly to provide the basic necessities for their family, never too proud to do what was needed. My Papu Tony outlived all my grandparents and died 5 years ago at the age of 94. He never did get to visit me here, but when I miss him, I walk down to the wood shop, I take a deep breath, and feel as if he's with me looking down at all the incredible work being done at this museum. He would have loved it here. I can picture him taking his daily walk along the river, perusing the boats, and ultimately finding his way to the shipyard woodshop so he can tinker with all of the tools. He would most certainly drive the shipwrights mad with all of his recommendations.